everyone. My name is Alessia. I'm a leadership and high performance coach. Also, I work for the Institute of Coaching at McLean, which is Harvard Medical School. All right, so how to be radically more productive. This is our schedule for today. I'm hoping to get through all of these concepts. Hopefully we'll still have plenty of time for Q&A. Sometimes I do have a tendency to talk fast, but this will be recorded. So hopefully you guys will get a lot out of this, this session here, this training. Okay, so first of all, it's Monday. And most of us set out on Mondays hoping for a good week. We hope to get kind of through the week unscathed. We hope that we have the time to accomplish our tasks and maybe even work on things that are important to us. Yeah, as the week unrolls, little fires tend to crop up everywhere, and we find ourselves kind of being more reactionary than visionary. And at the end of the week, we're tired and we feel like we didn't really get the things done that we wanted to get done, the things that were actually valuable and important. So this might be you 100% of the time. This may be you only 50% of the time, but we can all kind of relate to the feeling of overwhelm in our workload and the general feeling of just being too busy. Well, in this training, we're going to learn how to overcome this busyness and overwhelm and get the things done that we need to get done, and even get the things done that we want to get done. Most importantly, we're going to learn how to trust ourselves to do the things we tell ourselves that we're going to get done. Because there is nothing more reassuring than having a guarantee that you will get the things done that you said you would. But first, we need to learn a little bit more about the science of time. So in 2003, Kaufman, Scarborough, and Lindquist did an interesting study on the perception of time scarcity. Their primary question was, does everyone experience time demands in the same way? And their short answer was no. They found that the perceptions of time scarcity and time abundance are directly linked to how people think about time and not their objective amount of free time. This essentially means that the way you perceive time as scarce or abundant is mostly reliant on your mindset around time. So in the study, the authors found that time perception was not correlated with workload or number of dependents, indicating that people who objectively had less time did not perceive their time as actually less scarce. And from this study, we can postulate that time is actually not objective. It is in the eye of the beholder. And some people perceive their time as scarce, and some people perceive their time as abundant, and that there are physical and mental repercussions from perceiving time as scarce. The way that people think about time contributes directly to their experience of time scarcity. The authors found that high scores on time scarcity are likely to be related to inefficient mental actions, processes, or planning. And they actually put people who experience time scarcity in this study in 3 different buckets, which they named thinkels, expect, and seldom, which seem to me like very uncreative names and very strange ways of naming groups, but we'll go with it. So thinkels were essentially people who they found that perceived time as scarce. And what these people did is that they were big multitaskers. So they were, when I'm doing something, I'm thinking of something else. I'm not actually focusing. So this type of thinking pattern seemed to directly correlate with perceptions of time scarcity. The other group of people was they called expect. And they essentially had the thought pattern of, I am more or less expecting that nothing will go according to my schedule. So they basically just didn't believe in schedules. And then the third group was seldom, which they had the thought pattern of, I seldom have any idea on how I spent my time yesterday. So they kind of had kind of poor time accounting and didn't really know how they spend their time. So there is no time is just a thought. And this focus on scarcity, which typically results in our brain entering a stress response, which is the sympathetic response, and focusing on problems and feelings of urgency, is it has repercussions. And in order to combat this, we need to focus our thoughts on time abundance, which would allow us to be in a more solutions focused, expansive, and creative mindset. So now that we have disproven the concept of objective time and kind of crushed the whole "I'm too busy" excuse, we see that so much of our productivity and our ability to achieve goals relies entirely on our mindset. So oftentimes we know exactly what we should be doing in theory, but the actual practice of applying a concept seems like a confounding task. So we often know the things that psychological science tells us to do, but the actual application is a little bit difficult. And when it comes to managing your mind, it does not happen in just one instance. It happens over great amounts of repetition. This is something I see quite a bit with my clients, is that they kind of have an epiphany of, this is mindset, or this is how I should be thinking. But then they find that it's difficult over time and they think it should be easy. But this repetition, this is the key. And this is the difference between knowing in theory how to make a free throw, say like in basketball, versus actually being Michael Jordan and being able to hit free throws. I think his percentage is 83.5% of the time. And the difference is really practice. And so if you set out this week and you try to change your mindset around time scarcity and find it to be difficult, this is not an indication that you are doing something wrong. Change takes time and work, and the only reason the "I am busy" thought feels so easy in your mind right now is because you are so well practiced in thinking this thought. So in order to have control over your work, you need to have control over your mind. And perceptions and thoughts are actually extremely important to our physical and mental states. And the thought "I am busy" often makes us feel overwhelmed and stressed, which is not conducive to effective and creative work. And remember, your thoughts are optional. Even though your thoughts feel like they're happening to you, you are actually the one creating your thoughts. So in this case, replacing a thought like "I am busy" with something like "I always get my tasks done," or even something more neutral like "I have a plan for my tasks," may result in much better outcomes than constantly thinking "I am busy," which is kind of something we're trained very much in our society to do. Again, this is the real work and it takes time. And this is the work that I do with a lot of my clients. And once you really can manage your mind around time or around anything, you can really manage anything. So here are just 4 things that your thoughts have an impact on. First of all is energy. So we know from lots of studies that more positive thoughts create more positive emotions, which are energizing, and negative emotions are typically more energy draining. Resistance. So your thoughts can result in resistance in doing work, which often shows up as procrastination. This is a whole nother webinar in itself, but I will say for now that with procrastination, it's a hard word to say, you need to completely focus on the process and not the outcome. So you need to completely forget about the outcome, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. So number 3, positive emotions. Your thoughts impact positive emotions. So as mentioned above, they are energy promoting, but they are also protective against burnout and even the common cold, which is an interesting fact. And self-perception. So your relationship with yourself is actually incredibly important. It's kind of like having an unreliable coworker that not following through on the things you said you will do is incredibly stressful to your mind and really to your body. So just kind of think of that when you kind of promise yourself that you'll do something and you don't really follow through. That kind of creates a pattern of potential stress because you have no idea if you're going to do something or not. Okay, so here we go. We're going to touch on a little bit more science here, and we're going to dive into the neuroscience, which I think is particularly interesting. So the story of motivation is very much a story of dopamine. So we know high achievers attach dopamine to the effort process, meaning that they attach a sense of reward to the effort process itself. And dopamine is actually very subjectively controlled. So that means you can create meaning for the effort process. You can focus your thoughts on the fact that you are doing a particular task that moves you closer to an ultimate goal. But the reward should not be in the task. The reward should be in the task and in the process. You focus on the steps and the sense of accomplishment you give yourself from completing each step in the process, but not in focusing on the outcome. So instead of kind of focusing on if something will go, if you will achieve a certain goal, you want to more focus on the steps that it would take to achieve that goal and focus completely on that process. This can be a little bit counterintuitive, especially since we were all kind of brought up in a school system that focuses very much on an outcome, but it is a lot more conducive to resilience and kind of achieving goals over time. So with repeated bouts of effort, we use and release more epinephrine. And you are essentially taking out like money out of your motivation bank. If you kind of think of motivation as a bank, you keep with each bout of effort, you're taking out little bits of motivation and eventually you don't have any. And once the efforts of epinephrine get high enough, you feel like quitting and it feels exhausting. The thing is that dopamine is actually able to push back on the epinephrine and give you the feeling that you could continue and even the feeling that you want to continue. And dopamine is not just about the reward, it's about motivation and drive. So subjectively releasing dopamine in your mind like this allows us to enjoy the process of the effort. So kind of like in the example of this, like running a marathon, instead of focusing on just the completion of the marathon or a certain time, one might focus on kind of the maybe joy that you get from the actual running, from the process of training. And you need to be very careful about focusing on end goals because they can actually be really counterproductive to productivity. So keeping the goal in mind is important to orientation to make sure that you're not like chasing some random goal, but the gap between where we are and the end goal can feel overwhelming and is not conducive to motivation. This is why it's so crucial to reward the effort process, which is in part rewarding the things you are doing and not rewarding focus on the task you are doing. So a little bit more here on the neuroscience behind productivity. I just want to touch on neuroplasticity, which is essentially learning is at the foundation of productivity. We need to learn to be more productive. And in order to have learning, we need neuroplasticity, which is just the brain's ability to change itself. Um, adult neuroplasticity depends on two things: deep focus and deep rest. This is key because a lot of us forget the deep rest part. And the biggest difference between adult plasticity and child plasticity is the fact that adult plasticity must be self-directed, which means it requires a greater amount of focus. And by focus, I mean like actual deep focus, not checking Instagram or like checking your email and then like going back to your task, which is our kind of modus operandi right now. All right, so now finally, we're actually to the real life applications. And so we're going to actually put all of these pieces together of the science, and we're going to create a strategy that incorporates all of these elements. And kind of just to review all of the things we talked about that are components of productivity is extreme focus, rest, belief in the schedule, belief that schedules work, trust in yourself, a time abundance mindset, focus on the process and not the outcome, process reward and value attribution. Okay, so if we were to create a strategy for this week and kind of all of our weeks, that incorporate the science behind productivity to create kind of the best week possible that we can have when it comes to productivity, we would have something like this. And I created an acronym because psychologists love acronyms, and it spells out PEAK. So it has 4 steps. It's prep, execute, assess, and kudos, which for anyone that's not kind of a native English speaker, kudos is like celebrating, like giving props to yourself, like for an accomplishment. And okay, so first of all, we will start with prep. So if we want to create a productivity strategy for our week that's kind of grounded in scientific principles, we would first want to lay out all of the tasks that we have, almost like a mind dump, all your tasks on a piece of paper. This would ideally be done in the beginning of the week, and maybe on a Monday, maybe even today. And you want to make sure to write out everything, not just the things that you need to do. You want to write out also the things that you want to do. So even, going on a walk or meeting with a friend, maybe some incorporated breaks, some deep rest, are important as well. I see a lot of my clients focusing completely on just, the tasks that they need to do. And there's nothing for them to really look forward to in their calendars. So some people really find it enjoyable to look forward to times of focus. So maybe like 2 hours of focus time is something that in which you can actually really work on the things you want to work on. It doesn't always have to be, like sleep or exercise or anything like that. And so what you would do is you would put all of your tasks on a list piece of paper, everything that you need to do for the week, and then you would map them all out in your calendar. So you want to place all of your tasks on the calendar and make sure that you get that focus time in. Make sure you get, the things that you want to do in. And this is actually an example of my own calendar. um, and you want to kind of prioritize the tasks also that you find meaningful. So this is a great way to make sure that you're not completely reactionary in your week. A lot of people have goals and dreams that they want to achieve, but they find that at the end of the week, they did all these little tasks, and then they didn't really have time to have that period of time that they need to achieve or to plan kind of bigger goals. So this kind of helps you make sure that you are accountable in finding plans and finding time to plan these things, and really being able to think about your life in a holistic way in which you're able to really accomplish all of the things that you want to accomplish and not kind of get sucked into that kind of email spiral on Monday in which you kind of just are very reactionary. And I'm sure that's happened to all of us. So once you have all of your tasks on your calendar and you kind of allocated time for everything that you want to do in the week, you can just kind of throw away that piece of paper in which you dumped all of your tasks on. You have your objectives here, and basically all you need to do now is just put your head down and execute. You don't need to think about the outcomes of these. You don't need to think about when you're going to find time to do things. That's already been decided. And I did want to mention that for tasks in which you're feeling a lot of anxiety, or for any task that you feel like has a lot of pressure, it can be really helpful to just put the process in the calendar and not the objective of the task. So maybe if your objective is to run a marketing campaign that acquires 100 new users, you want to just put in your calendar, work on marketing campaign, or create the graphic for the marketing campaign. You don't want to put the objective, because that our brains just don't love that. It gets kind of stressful for us, and it's typically not conducive to productivity. Okay, so now most of you are probably thinking, and I'm sure I'll get this question, I can't predict my week. I always have some random emergency. I have things that come up and I can't schedule things out like the way that you mentioned in the previous slide. And yeah, I don't have this much control over my days. So what I would say is that you can always incorporate overflow time, and you can actually even incorporate like emergency time into your calendar. So maybe at a certain time each week, you set out a block of all the things that you know will crop up and you'll need time to do. We just need to be really realistic in how our time is managed. Okay, and so the last two steps is assess and give yourself kudos. So typically at the end of the week on a Friday, you would go over what went well. You would think, what will I carry over? What will I do differently next week? And then make sure to celebrate. You need to celebrate the process, the work. You need to celebrate the fact that you actually executed what you said you would do and you stuck to your plan. And now you kind of have this new ability to trust yourself in knowing that when you set something up, you're going to do it. And kind of all of the fear, anxiety behind whether you're going to get something done, whether you have time to get something done is gone, because you know for a fact that you will get it done and you do have the time because you actually mapped it out. And so I want to take questions, but I also want to mention first that, let's see here, that that sorry. So in this presentation, we kind of saw that in order to be radically more productive, it's very much on achieving a mindset in which you are able to kind of function at your maximum capacity. And this is super easy to say and read about, but it's really hard to do, which, like we said, it's the difference between imagining a free throw and actually being Michael Jordan. And this is why so many leaders and high achievers choose to work with a coach. So as a thank you for attending this training, I actually opened up 10 intro coaching sessions in my calendar. So if you're interested in working with a leadership and high performance coach, you can feel free to sign up at this link here, the Calendly link. I will put it in the chat as well. And we can meet for an hour it's a free session, and kind of discuss your goals and see if that's something that will help you achieve them. Okay, so I'm going to paste that link, and I am also going to do the Q&A. And so I would love to, let me just here paste this link. Okay, and so for the Q&A, I would love to actually bring you guys on for this Q&A if it's possible. So if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand. If someone is a Zoom master and has insight on how to tell people to raise their hand. Are you guys able to raise your hands? And comment in the chat. Yes, you're able to raise your hand. Okay. All right. So if you have your hand raised, I'm going to bring you on for a question, because I'm assuming that if you have your hand raised, you have a question. Okay. So let's see here. I'm going to promote you to panelist. Okay. Hopefully this works. All right. Hi, Pedro. Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you.
All right. What's your question?
First of all, thank you. I also use a lot of planning for my week using Google Calendar, but I think I have two problems. One is that I plan a lot of stuff, probably 14 or 15 hours per day, and I end up the week exhausted. And I think that makes it difficult for me to enjoy and to actually celebrate everything I did during the week. So this part of the kudos that you propose is not entirely clear for me how I would be able to implement it in a very busy week.
Well, it sounds like you don't have a lot of rest in your week. Is that correct?
Yeah, probably the minimum.
The minimum. Okay. Do you feel like there's like do you feel like there's a gap between what you think you should be able to accomplish and what you can realistically accomplish as a human?
Uh, I think I have learned to plan my week accordingly. So I usually finish what I planned on Monday, but it's a lot. I think that's the problem. It's not that I finished the week and I didn't accomplish what I planned for, but I'm exhausted and I still have this feeling that I could have accomplished more probably.
Okay. Yeah, I see. Um, well, what do you mean by accomplish? Do you mean the tasks or do you mean the outcomes?
Mm, I think it's more like a feeling because if I mean in my mind it's clear that I finished everything that I planned for the week, but I don't have this I don't know if you would call them leisure blocks of time in which you can like disconnect entirely for what you are going to do next. And I think even though I really enjoy what I do, I think I don't have like these vlogs that you mentioned about just contemplating or just enjoying what I did during the week.
Do you want to have them?
I think so, but in reality, I don't give myself that time. So
Why don't you give yourself that time?
probably because I want to continue doing those tasks that I planned on Monday.
What do you think would happen if you didn't continue?
I'm going to feel uh, that I'm not accomplishing what I want to do.
Do you want to feel that way?
No, of course not.
Are you
I want,
sure?
yeah, I want to accomplish what I plan for. If that's your question, but of course I want to feel better.
So you want to feel better. So do you think that do you think there's any benefit to feeling like you're not accomplishing anything?
Mm, Rationally, no, but maybe that's kind of a motivator for me.
So yeah, I mean, this is quite common for all of us to feel that when we stop kind of feeling anxious about trying to accomplish different things, or like giving ourselves like a little bit more compassion, giving ourselves a little bit more like celebration, we will get lazy and stop stop hustling the way we normally would.
Yeah, exactly.
So okay, well, so like kind of like we talked about in the webinar, is that a lot of it is your thinking. So kind of what's the thought that you're thinking at the end of the week that makes you want to keep just adding more tasks?
Probably that I want to accomplish more and that I'm in a rush. I have to accomplish a lot and I have, yeah, I'm returning to what you said, that I don't have enough time. So since I don't have enough time, I need to work more in order to accomplish. Yeah.
So it creates like a sense of anxiousness, right? Because like, I mean, obviously, anytime we think we don't have enough of anything, we get anxious.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, like if there's not enough of anything, literally not enough air, not enough water, not enough time. So what if so the brain doesn't like to be lied to because it's smart. So you're not gonna like, I don't think you're gonna have a lot of success just starting to think the thought like, no, I have lots of time. But what if you thought of something a little bit more neutral? Because objectively, there is no like if a bunch of scientists come in and look at your day, they wouldn't be able to objectively say you don't have enough time.
That's right. Yeah.
So what's kind of maybe something more scientific and neutral that you could say in your mind instead of, I don't have enough time?
Yeah, probably planning a wider scope, probably plan my month as I plan my week, because I'm very good at planning my week, but maybe I'm just planning in a short-sighted way that stops me from seeing like a bigger picture for a year, for example. So maybe, yeah, that could be very useful, actually.
And so what are you thinking when you're planning the month?
Uh, I don't do it. I plan my weeks, but I don't
No,
plan
no,
my
but
months.
in this scenario,
Okay.
when you do, what will you be thinking?
Mm, Probably the same thing that I do with when I plan my week. That is, uh, yeah, like establish perfectly what I want to accomplish and to divide it into tasks. Estimate how many hours I'm going to work in those tasks, and then assign them to a day or a week. So I'm thinking that probably it would be very helpful to plan my month, the 4 weeks in a month, as I plan one of my weeks.
Hmm. And what do you think will help you kind of feel a better sense of achievement?
Mm, Actually, doing those tasks and getting what I'm planning for, and probably, I don't know, maybe I'm cheating, but I think it's going to be easier to plan for those leisure time if I have 3 or 2 weeks ahead
Mm-hmm,
than just planning them for this week.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. That makes sense.
Okay. Well, good luck. Let me know how it goes.
Sure, thank you.
And make sure to do that last step.
Yeah,
Give yourself some credit.
thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So now I'm going to have to figure out how to, um, so I'm going to, okay. And then I'm going to bring in Udo, promote you to panelist. Hi, Udo.
Hi, Alicia, right?
Alessia, yes. Hi.
Alicia.
Mhm.
Yeah, my question is when I see like a calendar that's all nicely filled out, that already stresses me in a
It
way.
stresses you, yeah.
And for me, a lot of things I have no idea how to estimate how much time it's going to take.
Mm, okay.
So, well, not everything I have no idea, but like I do a lot of tasks that are not, it's not repetitive. So it's like something for the first, like prepare a presentation on something.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's going to take 2 hours or a day in the end.
So what do you do when you think that thought? Like what's your kind of tendency? What's your action when you're thinking this thought?
Well, I'm not really thinking it because I don't plan my week that way.
Yeah,
So what
yeah.
I'll just do is like, yeah, I have some idea when the deadline is and that I need to start working on it. So I'll say on that day I have to work on it, and I do map out my day a bit. But often it goes off and I don't stick to the plan. And then having like, for example, I start on Monday, if I had a calendar like you showed on Monday and it already goes wrong. And then I think I have to reschedule everything else on the calendar.
Okay. So do you think, well, so the calendar is really meant to be individual to you. That's kind of why I spoke a little bit about the overflow time. Some people do like a little bit more rigidity. Some people like a little bit more leeway, but so the calendar is created by you and it's an extension of you. So essentially you're able to kind of do whatever you want with your calendar. The reason that I think the calendar is effective because it's meant to reduce anxiety, not promote it. So if you want to choose to have like a 3-hour block to think about a webinar that you need to make, then that's and that's how you work best, then I think that's great.
Oh.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, kind of makes sense. Probably makes sense, would make sense to plan in some blocks and then leave time open. Where I know I have a to-do list, and when I have the open time, I can just work on the to-do list. That might work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what I found effective with a lot of people is to make sure to have focus time. That's kind of like the most important one. And because a lot of people tend to have very reactive jobs. And so if you and in the focus time, you don't necessarily have to put what you're working on, but you know that you kind of have that block.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And then the second question is, like you already brought it up in the previous question. How do you realistically estimate how much you can accomplish? Like I'm the type of person, like I have lots of stuff and I constantly ideas bubble up in my head that I would want to do.
So how do we find kind of like any type of truth in our society? Do you know?
Yeah.
We use experiments, right? So in order to find any type of like objective truth, we need to run experiments like scientists.
Okay.
So I would say you want to formulate a hypothesis. So say like, in order to write this post, whatever, I think I'll need 30 minutes, and run the experiment. And then after you run it, gather your data. And then the key is to be completely unemotional about it. So you do not get to you do not get to be angry at yourself if it took longer. You kind of just it's just data, and you can kind of adjust as you see fit.
Okay, yeah. And actually just talking about the question, I kind of like the answer came to me as well, that when I feel overwhelmed by how much I want to do, I obviously am trying to do too much.
Yeah,
like
it's a lot of it is acceptance.
Yeah, when you're in the situation, you don't realize it that way, but just looking at it this way, yeah, it becomes very obvious. So this was very helpful. Thank you.
I'm glad. Yeah. And that's the beauty of coaching, is that oftentimes you all have the answers.
Cool.
That's great.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so if anyone else has a question, make sure to raise your hand. Let's see. Okay. And if you want to just type in your question, if you're camera shy, you can do so as well. All right, any questions? Raise your hand. Let's see. Just looking through here, or also have a Q&A. I think the link does not work for me. Oh, the link for the Calendly, maybe? Let me see if I can. I wonder if that's the link that you're referring to. Let me just paste it in again. Okay, let's see. Okay, here's the link to the Calendly. For me, the issue is finding breaks in the day. There is always too much work to do in any given instance, so it's constant reprioritization. Okay, so this is again kind of the difficult work in mindset, is that a lot of us feel like our days happen to us, and we need to kind of focus on the fact that we are the ones in control of our days. And so in order to I kind of like the example, I forget who used this, but there's this example in psychology in which a part of our brains is almost like a toddler, and then another part of our brains is kind of like an older, wiser person. And the toddler is always like, I want candy. I want to, just to focus on whatever I want to focus. And I just want this right now. And we need to kind of be the adult to ourselves and understand in our wisdom that we do need breaks, and we do need to kind of create a schedule that works for us, and kind of that acceptance. And for a lot of us, we think that like working really like in an extreme manner is adult. But in a way, it's a little bit childish in the fact that it's unrealistic to think that we can take no breaks and we can just work perpetually without any type of rest. It's a little bit childish if you think about it. It's a tiny bit of an immature mindset. And I say this as someone who also does this. I'm not judging in any way. But to really be kind of the adult to ourselves and to kind of trust ourselves, we need to be able to incorporate those breaks and to actually, kind of almost like put our foot down and be like, no, this is what I'm doing now. And a lot of this is kind of in that mindset work in which you actually have to practice, like practicing a free throw, actually practicing thinking that particular thought in which you think, I have enough time to take breaks, or I will create enough time to take breaks. And as you kind of perpetually practice that thought, your mind will probably come up with better solutions on how to take breaks. This is the whole problem-focused versus solutions-focused science. When you focus more on a solutions mindset, your brain comes up with much better, more creative ways of doing things. So that shift is actually, it can be very helpful. And I know this sounds a little bit, sometimes a little woo-woo, which I completely agree with you, but it does work. Okay, so, I have, if I block out, I push something and I end up pushing it forward. Okay. If I block out time to work on something, I end up pushing it forward. Okay, so that's procrastination. If I block out time on something and I end up pushing it forward and forward again. So this again is the practice. In neuroscience, we have something like a saying that we say, the thing you do is the thing you will do. So basically, the way to break a cycle is to just do something different, which sounds incredibly easy and simplistic to say, but as we know, it's quite difficult. So if you're pushing something forward and forward again, what I would advise is to block out on your calendar the most basic first step of that project. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard kind of this advice for writers, in which they basically are just asked to open up the writing application, or just write one sentence, because a lot of times our brain kind of comes up with this block against like exerting energy. Like our brain's whole like mission is to conserve energy. And if we think that basically the outcome won't be worth it, or that we won't be successful in the outcome, or that the energy that we'll have to use in order to make that outcome happen is too great, our brain will kind of block that motivation and block that effort. So you kind of want to you either want to really focus on making yourself think that you will be successful, or you really want to focus on kind of making your brain think that you don't need to exert that much energy to reach this goal. So it's kind of like, no, it's fine. All we have to do is open up the Word document or something like that. So a lot of that is procrastination, which can be pretty tricky to work with, but it takes effort and practice and repetition. Okay, so greetings, Raj from India. Can't talk since I'm afraid I might wake up the neighbors. 1 a.m. here. I am confused when you said manufacturing thoughts, managing mind. We don't have control over what surfaces in the mind for whatever reasons. Once I latch onto some thought that I can manufacture, my imagining following it through. Is that right? Couple of questions. How not to postpone tasks that are important for the system, but personally boring? Oh, how to not postpone tasks that are important for the system, but personally boring. Okay, so like I said, again, it's similar to procrastination. It's the energy that we need to put into that task is great. And then we feel like the outcome is not worth it because maybe an outcome for the system isn't as attractive as an outcome for ourselves. So what we would want to do is just put that time aside for that task, and then basically completely erase any thinking about the outcome. And you want to focus on just kind of the basic steps of that task, maybe even write out a list of the smallest steps in that task. And you do want to kind of come to it from an unemotional standpoint, in which it's just process. And sometimes it can be helpful to couple process with something you do like doing, like maybe you like listening to a certain type of music, and just kind of understanding that this is just process, and you can kind of learn to enjoy that process if you lean in more into kind of the things that are good about it instead of kind of the resistance that you have. So yeah, a lot of it is just kind of being much more action oriented, and just having less kind of contemplating the whole process less, because you essentially, if you're contemplating it a lot, you're probably focusing a lot on the outcome. And so if you're just thinking about only the process, there's only so much that we can think about when we're thinking about the steps of doing something, being completely kind of unemotional with the outcome. And so if you're very cold with just the steps you need to do, like then you kind of, the next inclination there is just to do the steps, and not so much on the outcome. And how to stick to the schedule, those boring attacks, not to procrastinate. Yeah, so how to stick with the schedule. So I think with, and you had a previous question about thoughts, and yeah, so you can manufacture your thoughts. It's practice. So the first step is to really watch what you're thinking, and to be very aware of what you're thinking. So a lot of us, so this is a personal example. So when I first started doing things like this, and I scheduled kind of my time, my first inclination when I had kind of my focus time on my calendar was to, the first thing my brain popped up with was, you know what, we should really change our background of our computer. It looks awful. We haven't changed it in forever. And then, the other part of my brain's like, but wait, no, I have focus time planned. I should be doing the focus time. So we do kind of have these like warring natures in which a part of us wants to just rebel and do something that's easy and doesn't cost a lot of energy. And you need to kind of watch those thoughts and become very aware of them, because a lot of people, what they do is that they kind of listen to the thoughts in their brain and they just take them at face value. They're like, oh, I thought it, so it must be true. Well, like we said, the only reason that that thought feels so true and easy is because you've thought it so many times. The neural circuit in your brain is so well practiced. And so if you actually spend some time thinking a different thought, then that thought would be well practiced. So kind of like a lot of these questions that I'm seeing here remind me of that group in the study that we talked about, this time scarcity, that they don't believe in schedules. So if you don't believe in your schedule, if you don't believe in yourself and your ability to get the stuff done, then it's going to contribute to a lot of inefficiency and a lack of productivity, and probably a perception of time scarcity, because you just don't believe in it. I mean, if you just don't believe something's going to happen, you're going to find lots of reasons to not make it happen. But if you do believe that you're going to make it happen, then you're going to find evidence and reasons and new ways to actually make it happen. So a lot of it is that thought work. And let's see if you can give to give one to shift our relationship with productivity. Yeah, so stop thinking about the outcome, like no more outcomes. If I could give one takeaway, is that just like only process. So yeah, only process goals, only process tasks. This is just what you do. And yeah, I mean, it is important to think of the outcome once in a while, but honestly, you could just sit down once a month and think like, what is the outcome that I want for my life? What is the goal that I want for this month to achieve? Write down the goal and then just list out all of the tasks that you would do to achieve that goal. One thing that we use in coaching that can be really effective to overcome all of these mental blocks is that what we do is basically, I would say, I guarantee that you would achieve this goal. there is a 100% guarantee that I have a magical wand and your goal is achieved. So whatever you're thinking, whatever you want, like your business, your promotion, kind of whatever goal that you have in your mind right now, and think of it right now with me, I guarantee that you will accomplish this. Okay, so now that it's guaranteed, it's 100%, there is no potential for failure. Like that's not even, like it's not possible. So now that we know that it's guaranteed, what would you have to have done to accomplish it? So if we kind of have like fast forward on your life, we look at you in that end point, in that point in which you accomplished this goal. It was guaranteed, you accomplished it. It's the outcome you wanted. And now we need to just rewind the story, rewind the movie, and see all of the little things that you did to accomplish it. So you want to write those down, and then you just want to execute those. And just because even if the thinking here is that even if we can't predict the future, we have no idea if your goal will turn out well or turn out poorly, but we can influence our behavior. And so what happens is that our minds don't think of the most creative solutions. Our minds don't think of the best solutions when we're in kind of a failure mindset and we're like, oh, this is probably going to fail, et cetera, et cetera. But when we're in a solutions mindset, we think of better solutions, we think of better strategies, and we typically work harder. So the only thing you can really control here is your mindset and your belief. So it costs nothing to you to believe that you're going to achieve this. And by doing so, you're going to have better outcomes by believing that you're going to achieve this. And then it's like this weird virtuous cycle. Because I mean, if the kind of belief of not achieving it or the 50-50, it's kind of like, you don't know what's going to happen. So the benefits of actually just believing that you're going to achieve it are so great that you should just always believe you're going to achieve it. Essentially, like table that, like put it on a shelf, and then just execute the tasks, if that makes sense. So yeah, I want you all to just kind of believe that everything you do will be successful. But then make sure that you think of all of the things that you would have had to do to make it successful, and also all of the potential barriers that you would have had to overcome. Kind of like if you played out like a good movie in your mind in which the hero, overcomes all of the obstacles and goes through all the trials and has that like dark night of the soul. Kind of that whole storyline needs to be played out. But it feels so good because we know that there's going to be a good outcome at the end. Because if you think about it, a lot of our movies, we kind of assume that there's going to be a good outcome, which is why all of the trials and tribulations aren't so traumatic to us while we're watching them. So let's see, Max posted something interesting on procrastination, which might be useful to people. I find I procrastinate the most when I'm not sure how to do what I have to do, either confusion. Okay, so let's talk about confusion. All right, I love it when people say they're confused. So in my opinion, confusion is super, super beneficial to the brain. It's like this incredible state that our brain goes into to save energy. So when people say that they're confused, usually you're not confused. It's just like a really great way for your brain to save energy. And like we said before, the whole point of your brain is to conserve energy because it's evolutionarily adaptive. So what I would say when you're confused is you ask yourself the question, if I wasn't confused, what would I do? If I knew what I had to do, what would I do? If we go back to kind of our guaranteed good outcome scenario, like if I had a 100% guarantee of success, what would I be doing right now? So when I started asking, okay, so let's see. Next up, sometimes I've done before. Yeah, it costs nothing to have a solution mindset. Exactly. Okay, so I do have some more questions in the Q&A, which I'll try to answer. I have 3 questions here. Are there any books you'd recommend on the topic of productivity? Let's see. I like David Goggins' book, but that's not really about productivity. That's just about being, what is he? He's a Marine, or let's see. How do you manage just starting a task and focusing when your brain is distracting you, especially when you have a low mood? I often find myself creating a calendar of tasks, but not being able to stick to it, and results in a downward spiral of unproductivity. Okay. I'm guessing that, okay, so there's a few things that we want to unpack here. So focus, actually, when you're learning, it does feel kind of agitating. And I want you to think of it like lifting a weight. So think of it like you're doing bicep curls, and you're doing it with a weight that's new to you. It's kind of too heavy, but you know that you're doing it because you're building the muscle. So your brain is very similar in this way, especially with focus. So focus is learning, and learning feels very similar. That like discomfort, it feels very similar to kind of almost like weight training, in which you feel like a lot of pressure, you feel like you want to quit, and it doesn't feel good. But just think that when you feel that feeling, that's actually an indication that your brain is changing, and you should kind of try to keep going with it. Just like, you know, when you're lifting a weight and you feel that burn, and people are like, oh, I feel the burn, I should keep going, instead of stopping, right? It's similar in that way. And also, I want to make sure that you guys kind of have this takeaway, is that it's really, really, really important to be compassionate with yourself. So when you kind of start beating yourself up for not completing a task, or for not having done the calendar that you set out for yourself, it's super important to just accept it and kind of let it go. And really think of this as like being the scientist. So, you know, maybe you set out the calendar for this week and it didn't go well. Well, you're the scientist here. You're not emotional. This is just what happened. These are the facts. And maybe next week you kind of set out a different schedule for yourself, in which you maybe half it, like half the ambition, not, well, you know what I mean, like kind of half like the tasks, the goals, etc., to kind of be able to give yourself some feedback, and also be able to give yourself a sense of accomplishment. So if you weren't able to do the first version of the calendar, almost kind of like a product, like the 1.0, then try for the 2.0, and kind of just, I would just advise to keep going. We actually have a lot of evidence that shows us that, in scientific studies, that shows us that when people try to do a new behavior, or they try to quit a behavior they don't want to do anymore, if they keep trying and keep trying, they do get better at having a successful outcome with each attempt. So sometimes people think like, oh, I haven't been able to change this even though I've tried so many times. Well, the fact that you've tried so many times boosts your ability to achieve the outcome that you want, whether it's quitting something or starting something new. So yeah, I would tell you, Anonymous, that you want to kind of set the lowest bar possible for yourself and clear it. And I think with this, patience is key, patience and compassion. So what I mean by this is that I think you're kind of setting yourself up for like this giant, huge task. And again, our bodies, our brains are energy conservation mechanisms. And so your brain's like, heck no, like we're not doing that. Like this is way too much. Like it's almost like jumping into a freezing lake. You want to ease yourself into it. So what you want to do is kind of set your bar really low, something that you want, like, you know, for sure you can do, and then kind of build that sense of self-efficacy. And it's going to take a little bit of patience, but in the long run, you're going to end up super strong and super capable. Okay, so I have one more here, I think, maybe two more, if you guys want to stick around. And does it help to think of possible obstacles? Yes, it does, very much so. But you also want to think of yourself finding solutions for the obstacle. So kind of really think of that kind of hero's journey in your mind, in which you you encounter the dragon, you encounter whatever the dark forest, and you overcome these obstacles, and you kind of persevere. And it's actually really good to even think of different ways to persevere over the obstacles. So let's see, I find I am more focused early in the day between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. Yes, it would be optimal to schedule my high focus tasks in the time. However, it is difficult to schedule my tasks in the time due to meetings. I can't always. Do you have any tips on how to power through your high focus tasks in times of the day when you're not feeling energized or focused? Yeah. So what I found it to be interesting is kind of doing Pavlovian conditioning on yourself. So I think most of us have heard of like Pavlov's experiments in which he rang the bell and he fed the dogs and then they salivated, and but then he was able to condition them to just produce saliva just from the ringing of the bell. So what I would do is I would kind of think, what is the environment that you're creating for yourself during this 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. high focus time that you really enjoy? Is it maybe that it's right after you had your cup of coffee? Is it maybe that you're listening to a certain type of music? I do this like super weird thing where I'll listen to the same song over and over again, only when I'm doing extremely high focus work. So this is how I've written several research papers. So I'll listen to the same song over and over again. And what I found is that since my brain correlates that song with high focus time, and I'm able to also reverse the causation. So when I'm feeling kind of, like unmotivated and I play that song, my brain is like, oh, whoa, it's go time. Like we're writing, because it's been so kind of ingrained that way. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to kind of do Pavlovian conditioning on yourself. And yeah, yeah. And yeah, like I said before, it's very much about kind of being like a self-scientist and just being objective but also compassionate to yourself and kind of finding the things that work for you. One more here is, any tips on how to come back into the zone after getting distracted with my kids in homeschool? For me, that is the worst offender on how I derail my day. Okay, so I think the Pavlovian conditioning is a good tip for you as well, but also be careful about telling yourself that you're derailed. So it can actually, we're really tricky like this as humans, is that we often have a really, really good reason for telling ourselves things or doing things that we claim we don't want to do, right? So it's kind of like, I claim I don't want to eat a ton of carbs, but I do it anyways because I get a huge benefit from it with like the serotonin spike. So I claim that I get really distracted when, I come back to my computer, but also at the same time, is it that I'm benefiting from telling myself that I'm distracted, because then I get to do kind of funner things and not have to be kind of that adult to myself and focus. And obviously I do the same thing as well. No judgment on any of you guys, but just be careful on kind of the story you're telling yourself. Could you tell yourself a different story? Could you tell yourself, I know this, like jumping straight to the positive is very difficult to our brains, but there is the scenario where you could tell yourself like, I had a break in homeschooling my kids and now I can come back and do more work. With our brains, there's not a lot of like objectivity. Basically, we are just interpreting all of our scenarios. And there's a great neuroscience book on this. It's called How Emotions Are Made. So I know that's not a productive, I'm gonna put it right here. It's by Lisa Feldman Barrett, How Emotions Are Made. It's not a productivity book, but it will change your complete mindset around how your thoughts are made and how your emotions are made, because basically it's a neuroscience book, and the whole premise is that nothing is objective. So basically our thoughts construct all of our realities, and we can kind of change the way that we think about anything. And if we were able to change the way we think about it, it changes all the biological processes in our bodies. So if I come in and I think, and I completely empathize with you, Angel, I have kids as well. So this is very kind of relevant for me as well. So if I think like, if I come back after, you know, my kids interrupted me and I'm thinking like, God, like, I can't get my work done. It's so hard being, you know, like a working parent and having kids. Like this whole thing is just like, this whole 2020 setup is just insane. Nobody can get work done during this time. Then kind of even like these types of thoughts even affect like the hormonal systems in my body, and it affects everything. And kind of my stress responses are maybe elevated because I'm kind of again in that mentality of scarcity. But also it just makes me not want to act towards the goals that I have set for myself. So with our thoughts, we can actually be a lot more flexible than we think. And so we can actually introduce different thoughts in our minds to coincide better with the goals that we set for ourselves. So with kind of the thoughts and the behaviors that you do, I would want you to question, is this thought or is this behavior, is this emotion conducive to your goals? And if not, I would start experimenting with replacing your thought with something else. So it might be even something more neutral, like their kids need to get homeschooled, and this is something that this is the way 2020 is. Just even if it kind of blocks that a negative thought, it would be helpful. And I'm not one of those people that thinks that negative thoughts are like the devil. Everything in our brains is useful, but you just want to be careful when it becomes less useful to you than it should be. And it kind of stops you from performing the tasks and the goals and the behaviors that you want. Okay, that was a really good question. Okay, so I think that is all of the questions, and I know we went a little bit over. So I want to make sure that we're kind of mindful of everyone's time. And again, I will send out an email with the link to this video and also the link to the Calendly. And it was really great to meet some of you on video. And for anyone I didn't get to meet, I wish I did. You will also get my email in the, you will get my email in the email. So if you have any other questions that you want to ask, feel free to do so. And I wish you guys a very productive and happy week. All right. All right. Take care all. Goodbye.